Welcome to today's video where we'll break down the 6 U.S. defense strategies for Asia, a topic that holds massive geopolitical weight in shaping not just regional but global security. We will talk about important points that are crucial for you to know, from strategic alliances to power projection. By the end of this video, you'll clearly understand how the U.S. is positioning itself in Asia, why it matters, and what's at stake for the future of international stability. If you're passionate about global affairs, military strategy, or simply want to stay informed on the world's most pressing topics, subscribe now and join our community of engaged minds. When we talk about defense strategy in Asia, the very first thing you need to understand is that nothing matters more than strong alliances and partnerships. If you're trying to hold ground in one of the most contested regions on Earth, you don't stand alone. You stand with others who share your vision, your values, and your readiness to defend them. That's exactly how the U.S. is approaching Asia. It's not just about tanks and aircraft carriers. It's about relationships, trust, and long-term cooperation. That's where real power comes from. Let me be very clear. The United States knows it can't protect its interests in the Indo-Pacific without dependable partners. So it's doubling down on its alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines, not just out of tradition, but because those alliances are strategic, critical, and in some cases, irreplaceable. Japan, for instance, isn't just a trading partner, it's a key player in the region's security framework, and both countries know that their ability to act quickly and decisively depends on constant coordination. That's why we're seeing more joint training, more intelligence sharing, and more shared defense planning than ever before. It's not just about military presence, it's about mutual readiness. The U.S. isn't just sending hardware to Asia, it's sending a message. We're here, and we're in this together. That message becomes even more powerful when it's echoed by regional partners. Think about it. If you're a potential aggressor and you see not just one country standing in your way, but 5, 6, even 10 working in unison, that changes the calculus. That makes you think twice. That's deterrence at work. And here's the thing nobody wants to talk about, but I will. Relationships are like muscle. If you don't use them, they weaken. The U.S. understands that, which is why it's putting real energy into diplomatic ties. Leaders are meeting face to face. Military commanders are training side by side. Policy experts are aligning their goals across oceans. This isn't symbolic. This is strategy in motion, built on relationships that are tested, trusted, and constantly evolving. Now, let's talk about South Korea. That's a whole different layer. The Korean peninsula is still technically in a state of war. North Korea continues to be volatile, unpredictable, and heavily armed. And yet, despite all that, the U.S.-South Korea alliance remains one of the strongest military partnerships in the world. That didn't happen by accident. That happened through decades of commitment, joint planning, and shared sacrifice. And in today's world, that alliance acts as a stabilizing force, not just for Korea, but for the entire region. Then there's Australia, a rock-solid partner with a geographic advantage. Positioned in the Southern Hemisphere, it gives the U.S. a powerful operational platform while sharing a commitment to democratic values and global security. The U.S. isn't just working with Australia, they're building together on submarines, air defenses, and long-term intelligence strategies. It's a partnership grounded in shared goals, not short-term interests. And let's not forget the Philippines, whose strategic location is essential for maritime security and regional access. After a few years of uncertainty, that relationship is bouncing back strong, with expanded base access and revitalized military ties. That's what happens when you rebuild trust, you unlock capability. So when you hear defense strategy for Asia, don't just picture ships in the ocean or bases on the map. Picture handshakes. Picture late-night strategy calls between commanders. Picture leaders showing up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's critical. Because that's what this strategy is rooted in. Partnerships that hold the line when it matters most. Let's talk about presence, not just being somewhere, but being there on purpose, with clarity, commitment, and strength. That's what forward military presence is all about. And in Asia, it's absolutely non-negotiable. If you want to influence outcomes in this region, where tensions run high, rivalries are deep-rooted, and geography defines power, you can't just sit back and watch. You've got to show up, stay alert, and hold your ground before the fight ever starts. The United States knows this. That's why its forward presence in Asia isn't a temporary setup, it's a long-term strategy. We're not talking about a few ships passing through, we're talking about a deliberate positioning of air power, naval strength, and rapid response forces in places like Guam, Okinawa, and across the Pacific. These are not just bases, these are signals. They tell the world, we're here, we're ready, we're not going anywhere. And here's what's critical. Location shapes leverage. Think about Guam. That island may be small, but it packs enormous strategic value. It sits at the intersection of vital air and sea lanes. From there, the U.S. can respond to threats quickly across the Indo-Pacific, whether it's the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, or the Korean Peninsula. It's close enough to act fast, but far enough to be resilient. That's not luck. That's strategy. The same goes for Okinawa in Japan. That presence gives the U.S. unmatched access to Northeast Asia, where tensions with North Korea and a rising China continue to demand vigilance. The troops stationed there are not just watching, they're constantly training, running drills, enhancing readiness with Japanese forces. They're not waiting for conflict, they're preparing to prevent it, because deterrence is not passive. Deterrence is an active presence that makes adversaries think twice before making a move. And don't underestimate the power of visibility. When U.S. forces are stationed visibly in the region, it reassures allies, it strengthens confidence, and it creates real-time cooperation. That kind of cooperation doesn't just build trust, it builds muscle memory. When a crisis hits, it's not the first time these teams are working together, it's the 100th time. That makes all the difference. You also have to understand the psychological weight of forward presence. It sends a message without saying a word. A carrier strike group in the Pacific isn't just about firepower, it's about presence. It tells the world, we're watching, we're ready. That message matters. Because in geopolitics, uncertainty creates openings for aggression. But visible strength, that keeps things in check. And it's not just about being in one place, it's about having layered positioning. You want to be flexible. You want to be unpredictable in the right way. That's why the U.S. is investing in rotational deployments, smaller agile units, and mobile operations that can shift across locations. The goal isn't to be stuck in place, it's to be forward and fluid. All of this reflects a deeper truth. If you want peace, you have to be present where conflict might start. Not after the fact, not when it's convenient, but now, constantly, strategically, intentionally. And presence doesn't just defend, it shapes behavior. It keeps allies united, adversaries cautious, and the balance of power intact. Because in today's world, showing up isn't a gesture. It's the foundation of control. Let's get something straight. Modern defense isn't about just having the biggest weapons or the most troops. That kind of thinking is outdated. What actually wins today, what actually keeps things stable, is integration. You've got to be able to pull every tool, military, diplomatic, technological, economic, into a single strategy that works together, not in silos. That's what the U.S. is doing in Asia through something called high integrated deterrence, and it's changing the game completely. Now, this isn't some buzzword. Integrated deterrence means that every branch of the military, every partner nation, and every relevant technology is aligned with one clear mission: deter aggression before it ever begins. It's not about waiting for a problem and reacting. It's about creating enough strength, clarity, and coordination that potential adversaries decide the cost of acting is just too high. Think about that for a second. Imagine trying to threaten or provoke a response when your opponent is already steps ahead across land, sea, air, space, and cyber. That's what integration means. The U.S. is not just counting on fighter jets or naval fleets, it's counting on satellites watching from above, cyber defense units blocking digital attacks, and international allies ready to respond in real time. It's a multi-domain approach, and it's smart, flexible, and powerful. And here's where it gets even more strategic. Integrated deterrence doesn't just involve the military. It weaves in diplomacy, economics, and international law. So if there's a threat in the South China Sea, for example, the U.S. response might involve a carrier group, but also a coordinated diplomatic push, sanctions where necessary, and legal action through international courts. It's a full-spectrum answer to a full-spectrum threat. Now think about what that does to a potential adversary's decision-making process. When they're looking at their options, they're not just seeing a military opponent. They're seeing a web of responses, gosh. Military resistance, political isolation, economic pressure, and legal consequences. That's deterrence with teeth. That's strategy with layers. You want to stop conflict before it starts? You've got to make the path to conflict so tangled, so difficult, so costly that no one wants to take it. And to do that, your systems, your allies, your capabilities, your messaging, they all have to be in sync. That's why integrated deterrence is the backbone of U.S. strategy in Asia right now. And it's not hypothetical. You're already seeing it in action. Look at how joint exercises are evolving. It's not just one country training for its own defense anymore. It's multiple nations, multiple domains, working through real-time scenarios together. A cyber attack doesn't just trigger a cyber response. It triggers a naval alert, an intelligence review, a coordinated diplomatic stance. That's how you build resilience and control the tempo of a threat. Even more importantly, integrated deterrence empowers partners. It says, we're not just defending you, we're defending this region together. That kind of shared commitment builds strength from the inside out. And it's that inner strength, that sense of joint purpose, that ultimately keeps instability in check. Because let's face it, in today's world, isolated actions don't cut it. Random shows of strength don't change anything. But when your actions are integrated, when your partners are aligned, and your tools are synchronized, that's when deterrence becomes real. That's when peace becomes possible. Let's get real for a moment. When it comes to defense, especially in a region as complex and high stakes as Asia, you're not going to hold the line with outdated tools. You can't rely on old systems and expect to outpace modern threats. If you want to lead, if you want to maintain stability and deter the kind of bold moves that can trigger regional chaos, then you have to stay ahead technologically. That's exactly why the United States is investing so heavily in next-generation military capabilities, especially when it comes to naval and technological superiority. Now, this isn't about showing off shiny new weapons. This is about having, an edge that counts when it matters most. China's military has been growing rapidly. Faster ships, more missiles, and an aggressive approach to territorial claims in the South China Sea and beyond. That's real. But here's the difference. While China may be growing in quantity, the U.S. is focused on quality, innovation, and integration. That's what wins in the long run. Let's take the Navy as a perfect example. In Asia, the ocean is the battleground, period. Whoever controls the seas controls the flow of trade, movement of forces, and projection of influence. And the U.S. Navy isn't just holding its ground, it's adapting. You're seeing a shift toward more agile, networked fleets, smaller, faster ships that can move with precision, carriers outfitted with the latest in electronic warfare, submarines that can strike silently from hundreds of miles away with pinpoint accuracy. That's what naval superiority looks like today. Not just brute force, but sheer precision and unpredictability. And then there's the technological leap that's happening behind the scenes. Artificial intelligence is being embedded into command and control systems, so decisions can be made faster and more accurately in high-pressure environments. Unmanned systems, drones in the air and at sea, are changing how surveillance, targeting, and even logistics are handled. Hypersonic weapons, moving at speeds 5 times the speed of sound, are rewriting the rules of what's defensible. The U.S. isn't just adding tools, it's changing the rules of the game. But what matters most here is this. It's not technology for technology's sake. Every innovation is designed to give commanders more flexibility, more options, and more time to respond. Because in modern warfare, time is everything. The side that can gather, process, and act on information faster has the upper hand. That's what this investment is really about, is speed and adaptability. Let me also tell you this. Strength through technology is also a signal. It tells your allies, we've got your back with the best systems in the world. And it tells your adversaries, you may want to think twice. That message is powerful. Because deterrence doesn't just come from being present, it comes from knowing your presence has teeth, that you can back up your words with capability that's tested, cutting edge, and ready to go when needed. This is what separates leaders from followers in the defense space. It's not about having the biggest number of ships or jets. It's about having the smartest systems, the tightest integration, and the most future-ready tools in your arsenal. That's how you maintain balance. That's how you hold peace. And that's how you send a message that you're not just ready for today, you're already prepared for what's next. Let's talk about presence in motion, because in the Indo-Pacific, it's not enough to just be there. You have to be seen. You have to move. You have to make it absolutely clear that international rules matter, that freedom of navigation isn't optional, and that no single country gets to rewrite the map. That's exactly why the United States conducts freedom of navigation operations, or FONOPs, and why they are a central pillar of the U.S. defense strategy in Asia. You need to understand what's really going on here. These operations aren't about provocation, they're about a principle. The U.S. Navy sails through international waters, especially in contested areas like the South China Sea, to reinforce a basic global truth. No country owns the ocean. You cannot just build artificial islands, claim the space around them, and then declare that waters that have been free for centuries are suddenly off limits. That's not how international law works, and it's not how peace is maintained. What's powerful about FONOPs is their niche symbolism and impact combined. When a U.S. destroyer sails past one of China's man-made islands, it's not just floating by, it's sending a message, quiet, direct, and unmistakable. The message is, we do not accept illegal claims. The world does not bow to coercion, and we will act consistently and peacefully to defend the rights of all nations to access global commons, air, sea, and space. And don't miss this. These operations are legal, measured, and routine. But they're also deliberate. They're based on global agreements, like the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which outlines the rights and responsibilities of all nations. So when the U.S. carries out these missions, it's not acting unilaterally. It's standing up for rules that the entire international community benefits from. That's leadership. That's how you set the tone for how power is used. And this isn't just about the U.S. asserting its own rights. It's about protecting the rights of others. Smaller nations in the region, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, they rely on these operations too. They may not have the capacity to challenge unlawful territorial expansion on their own, but when the U.S. steps in, it creates space for them to breathe, to speak, and to navigate freely without fear of intimidation. It's also worth noting that FONOPs aren't carried out recklessly. Every move is calculated. Every mission is designed to avoid unnecessary escalation while still holding the line. That's a tough balance to strike, but it's necessary. Because when a bully is testing boundaries, silence isn't strength, action is. Calm, firm, consistent action that reinforces the rules without crossing into chaos. And there's another layer to this. These operations test readiness. They're not just symbolic, they're practical. Crews stay sharp, commanders gain experience, responses are rehearsed in real time. That constant motion keeps forces alert, integrated, and prepared to respond if things escalate. So while the public might see a ship on the horizon, what's really happening is the quiet rehearsal of deterrence. And that matters. In today's world, power isn't just about firepower, it's about its presence with purpose. Freedom of navigation isn't just a policy, it's a commitment to an open world, to global stability, and to standing firm when others try to bend the rules. And when the U.S. sails through contested waters, it's not just sailing for itself, it's sailing for everyone who believes in a world where might doesn't make right. That's how you keep the seas open, the peace stable, and the message. There's a line in the sand that the world watches closely, and that line runs straight through the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan isn't just a flashpoint, it's a symbol of democracy in a region shaped by authoritarian pressure, a symbol of resilience, of identity, of autonomy. And for the United States, defending Taiwan's ability to stand on its own isn't just a military interest, it's a statement of principle, of strategy, and of deterrence. What most people don't realize is that support for Taiwan isn't about sparking a conflict, it's about preventing one. The entire goal of the U.S. approach is to ensure that no one, especially not Beijing, wakes up thinking today might be a good day to test the status quo. And that starts with capability. Taiwan has to be able to defend itself, not win a war alone, but make any aggression so costly, so difficult, that it forces hesitation. That's what deterrence looks like in practice. It's not about shouting, it's about building quiet strength. So, the U.S. is doing what any strategic partner would do. It's helping Taiwan modernize its defense. Not by flooding it with tanks and aircraft, but by giving it the tools that actually work in a real-world scenario. Mobile missile systems, smart surveillance tech, fast maneuvering ships, air defense that punches above its weight. The point isn't to make Taiwan a fortress, it's to make it resilient, unpredictable, and hard to overwhelm. That changes the entire dynamic. And here's where it gets even more important. This kind of support isn't loud. It's not made for TV. It's steady. It's consistent. It's happening in the background through arms sales, military training, and quiet joint exercises. It's about giving Taiwan the confidence and capability to hold its line long enough for the international community to respond if needed. That buffer, that breathing room, is essential to preventing a sudden, irreversible crisis. But there's a nuance that matters. The U.S. follows a policy known as strategic ambiguity, and it exists for a reason. The idea is to never fully reveal how the U.S. would respond in the event of a Chinese invasion. That uncertainty creates shy deterrence on both sides. It discourages China from acting impulsively, and it encourages Taiwan not to declare independence unilaterally. That balance may sound delicate, and it is, but it's also deliberate. It's a fine line walked in the interest of peace. At the same time, the message being sent is clear. Any attempt to change Taiwan's status by force would be met with consequences. That's not just U.S. rhetoric, it's echoed by other democratic partners around the world. And that shared stance increases the weight of deterrence. It's not just the U.S. watching. It's Japan, it's Australia, it's the European Union. That solidarity amplifies the cost of aggression. It reinforces the message. Taiwan's fate isn't a local matter, it's a global one. And let's talk about what that means for people living in the region. When Taiwan feels supported, when it knows it's not isolated, the whole region benefits. Stability flows outward, trade continues, tensions stay managed. That's what's at stake. Not just an island, but a signal to the world about how disputes are settled, and whether power or principle will guide the future of the Indo-Pacific. This isn't just about Taiwan, it's about upholding a rule-based order in a region where the rules are constantly being tested. Supporting Taiwan's defense isn't about war, it's about preventing one from ever. One of the biggest myths about strategy in Asia is that the U.S. is going it alone. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, one of the most powerful moves the United States is making in the region right now is building strength through a shared commitment, through multilateral engagement. And that's where the Quad steps in. You may have heard the name, short for the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. But what it really represents is a united front of four major democracies: the US, India, Japan, and Australia. This isn't a formal alliance like NATO. There's no treaty binding it, but don't mistake that for weakness. The Quad is built on something even stronger in today's world, and shared strategic interests and a common vision for a free, open, and stable Indo-Pacific. And when four powerful nations agree on that, they don't need to shout, they just act, quietly, decisively, together. What makes the Quad so important is its flexibility. It's not about building a giant military bloc. It's about aligning efforts. On defense, yes, but also on supply chains, infrastructure, cybersecurity, and regional resilience. It's a model for how modern partnerships should work. It brings different strengths to the table. India brings size, geography, and strategic leverage. Japan brings advanced tech, experience, and proximity to key flashpoints. Australia brings geographic reach and a rock-solid alliance with the U.S. And when all of that is linked with American power and leadership, you get a deterrence framework that's harder to isolate, harder to counter, and impossible to ignore. What's even more significant is that the Quad isn't operating in isolation. It's expanding influence by engaging with countries across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, offering alternatives to the influence China is pushing through its Belt and Road Initiative. It's not just about telling countries what to avoid, it's about giving them something better to choose. Infrastructure built to last, investments that come without strings attached, security cooperation that respects sovereignty and builds capacity. And let's not overlook what the Quad means in a time of increasing uncertainty. The world is shifting fast, power balances are moving, and smaller nations in the region are watching closely, trying to figure out who they can rely on. When they see the Quad working, when they see joint military exercises, coordinated disaster relief, shared vaccine distribution, and unified responses to cyber threats, they don't just see strength, They see stability. They see leaders showing up, following through, and building trust in the region. That trust is everything, because at the heart of all of this, defense, deterrence, diplomacy, is the simple fact that our relationships matter. And multilateral partnerships like the Quad remind the world that the U.S. isn't just defending its own interests, it's working with others to protect the idea of a balanced, open region where power isn't imposed but shared. It's also worth pointing out that this kind of partnership doesn't need a crisis to exist. It's not reactive, it's proactive. The Quad isn't waiting for something to go wrong before it acts. It's building strength now, aligning policies now, preparing together now. That's the difference between managing risk and walking into it unprepared. And that's the level of strategic thinking that sets the tone across the Indo-Pacific. Because in a region where the stakes are this high and the pace of change is this fast, you don't want to stand alone. You want to stand with others who are clear-eyed, committed, and moving in the same direction. That's what the Quad represents. And that's how real power is built, one trusted partner at a time. There's a part of modern defense that most people don't think about, not because it isn't important, but because it's invisible. You can't see it like ships in the ocean or troops on the ground. But it's happening above us and around us every second of every day. I'm talking about cybersecurity and space defense. Two domains that are no longer futuristic. They're current, they're active, and they are shaping the battlefield long before a single shot is ever fired. If you think the next great conflict will be fought only with tanks and planes, think again. It's already unfolding in the digital realm. In the background of every military decision, every diplomatic move, every strategic deployment, there's a race happening. To protect information, to control communications, and to dominate the high ground of space. And in Asia, where competition is intensifying and threats are becoming more complex, the U.S. is moving fast to stay ahead in both. Cyber attacks are no longer just the work of rogue hackers. We're talking about each state-sponsored operations. Well-funded, highly coordinated efforts to breach systems, steal sensitive data, and paralyze command centers. That's not theory, that's reality. And it's not just aimed at military targets. Critical infrastructure like power grids, satellite networks, financial systems, those are just as vulnerable. So the U.S. is not only protecting its own digital systems, it's also working with partners across the Indo-Pacific to build collective cyber resilience. That means shared intelligence, synchronized defense protocols, and rapid response teams that can neutralize a threat before it spreads. Now, shift your focus upward to space. Space used to be a domain of exploration and science. Now it's a domain of strategic competition. Satellites carry out more than GPS and weather forecasting. They handle encrypted communications, guide precision weapons, and monitor missile launches. If you lose access to those systems in a conflict, you lose your edge. That's why the U.S. Space Force and other allied space programs are stepping up, not just to defend American assets, but to ensure space remains secure and stable for everyone. What's powerful here is that cyber and space are deeply connected. If someone disables your satellite, you might lose your ability to communicate with forces across the Pacific. If they hack into your systems, they might redirect your defenses or blind your early warning networks. It's a domino effect. And the U.S. understands that in a region like Asia, where multiple adversaries are pushing boundaries, dominance in these invisible domains is just as critical as physical presence. But here's where the strategy goes deeper. The U.S. isn't hoarding this technology or knowledge. It's actively sharing it with partners. That includes joint cyber defense drills with countries like Japan and Australia, tech development agreements with South Korea, and space situational awareness sharing with allies throughout the region. These aren't symbolic gestures, they are investments in collective strength, because the threats don't respect borders, and neither should the solutions. This kind of integration is also about trust. When the U.S. shares early warning data, when it opens communication lines in a cyber crisis, it's building something far stronger than just deterrence. It's building confidence. The kind that reinforces every other part of the defense strategy. You can have bases, fleets, and aircraft carriers, but if your systems go dark in the opening hour of a conflict, none of that matters. That's why these invisible lines of defense are being treated with the same urgency and seriousness as every other piece on the board. Because in today's world, security isn't just about what you can see, it's about what you can protect, even when no one's watching. There's one thing that separates a strong defense strategy from a hollow one, and that's readiness. Not theoretical readiness, not on paper plans or rehearsed speeches. Real, on the ground, practiced physical readiness. Because when a crisis erupts in the Indo-Pacific, and make no mistake, the potential flashpoints are many, there won't be time to prepare from scratch. That's why the U.S. places so much emphasis on rapid response capabilities and joint military exercises with its allies in the region. Because when you're ready, you don't just survive a threat, you control it. Let's be honest, it's not enough to have bases, fleets, or technology if you can't move fast, if you can't coordinate, if you don't know how your systems and your allies' systems talk to each other in the heat of the moment. That's where the real work happens. In the drills, in the simulations, in the sweat before blood kind of training. That makes sure when things go wrong, everyone already knows their role. That's not glamorous, but it's what makes the difference between deterrence and disaster. You've probably heard about the U.S. conducting joint exercises with Japan, South Korea, and Australia. What you might not know is that these aren't symbolic. These are deeply technical, scenario-driven operations that test everything. Air defense coordination, amphibious landings, cyber responses, logistics under fire. They simulate real attacks with real equipment under real stress. That's how you prepare for the unexpected. You make the hard parts routine. You normalize coordination, not just between different units of the same military, but between entirely different nations' armed forces. And this is what's so powerful about it. When multiple countries train together repeatedly, year after year, they stop thinking like separate militaries and start operating like a single organism. That kind of cohesion doesn't happen overnight. It's built over time, through shared effort, mutual respect, and relentless focus on the mission. It means a Japanese destroyer can seamlessly support an American carrier group. It means an Australian cyber unit can plug into a U.S. command center and respond to a digital threat within seconds. That level of interoperability isn't just a strength, it's a necessity in the kind of high-speed, multi-domain conflicts that we're trying to prevent. And it's not just about big exercises once or twice a year. It's about constant forward movement. The U.S. is expanding rotational deployments, moving small, agile units in and out of key locations, always keeping them sharp, always keeping adversaries guessing. This flexible posture isn't just smart, it's strategic. It sends a message that the U.S. and its partners are not static. They're mobile, adaptive, and capable of responding anywhere, anytime. That responsiveness is what gives allies confidence. It reassures smaller nations that when they partner with the U.S., they're not alone. They're part of a system that trains together, learns together, and shows up when it counts. And it sends a very different message to potential aggressors, that this isn't a region full of disconnected actors. It's a network of readiness, a collection of forces that can come together with speed and force if needed. You can't fake readiness. You can't talk your way into being prepared. You build it through time, effort, discipline, and trust. And when the U.S. commits to that kind of preparation alongside its allies in Asia, it's not just checking a box, it's laying the foundation for siege deterrence that actually holds when the pressure is on. When we look at the big picture of defense strategy in Asia, there's one more piece you have to understand, something that goes beyond military might, presence, or technology. It's about influence. It's about power in a broader sense, how countries shape the future of the region not just through force, but through economics, diplomacy, and the stories they tell. And when we talk about influence in Asia today, we have to talk about China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's ambitious, it's massive, and it's reshaping the way countries think about infrastructure and investment. The U.S. knows this, and its response isn't just military, it's strategic, offering alternatives that protect sovereignty, promote sustainable growth, and uphold the rules of the road. Here's the reality. China's Belt and Road Initiative has poured billions into ports, railways, and roads across Asia and beyond. For many countries, it looks like opportunity, new infrastructure, jobs, and connections. But there's a catch. That kind of influence often comes with strings attached. Debt traps, loss of control over key assets, and political pressure. The U.S. sees this clearly, and it knows that military strategy alone can't counter it. That's why part of the defense approach includes offering countries viable alternatives, ones that come with transparency, respect, and long-term partnership. This isn't charity, it's smart strategy. When countries have trustworthy options, they're less vulnerable to coercion. When infrastructure projects are built with local input, sustainability, and open contracts, they build real resilience. And that resilience is a form of security. It means countries can say no to unfair deals, resist political pressure, and maintain the freedom to choose their own path. That's power in its truest form. And the U.S. isn't acting alone here. It's working with allies and partners, Japan, Australia, India, and even the European Union, to develop infrastructure financing and development programs that compete directly with Belt and Road. These programs aren't flashy. They don't always make headlines, but they matter because they show that alternatives exist, that investment doesn't have to come with strings, that countries don't have to sacrifice sovereignty for development. The military side of this is clear. Infrastructure matters for defense. Ports, airfields, roads, they aren't just commercial assets, they're strategic lifelines. The U.S. understands that helping build resilient infrastructure means the military can operate efficiently, allies can move freely, and supply chains stay open even in times of crisis. So this isn't just economics, it's part of a holistic defense strategy. And there's a narrative battle here too. The story countries hear about their future matters. Is it a future where they're dependent on one power's vision? Or is it a future where they can partner with a community of nations that respect their independence? The U.S. is pushing the latter. It's offering a vision of the Indo-Pacific that's open, rules-based, and prosperous, not controlled, closed, or divided. That vision aligns with the broader defense strategy, because power isn't just about missiles or ships, it's about hearts, minds, and choices. When countries feel empowered to make their own decisions without fear or coercion, that creates a foundation for lasting peace and stability. And that foundation is what underpins everything else: the alliances, the presence, the deterrence. Because at the end of the day, the best defense is a region that chooses cooperation over conflict, partnership over pressure, and freedom over force. Offering credible alternatives to Belt and Road isn't just about countering influence, it's about building a future where every nation can thrive on its own terms.